So we're here at Black Star Farms on the Leelanau Peninsula. My name is Lutes, and I'm the head winemaker for the wineries of Black Star Farms, because we do have a second winery over on the Old Mission Peninsula. I think a good experience can be different for different people depending on what they're looking for. But we typically suggest that people try to get here, especially if it's their first or maybe an early visit, in that they've not had too many winery visits, that they try to find time to come at a time when there's not an awful lot of people in the tasting rooms, not an awful lot of people in the wineries, and they can get a little bit more of an intimate experience with a knowledgeable staff person that can talk to them a little bit more at length about the wines, talk to them a little bit more at length about maybe their own preferences, maybe some things that they wouldn't ordinarily try, especially when you have as broad a selection as we do. And you know, the idea from my standpoint, and this comes from many years being in the service industry, is to have the opportunity to turn people on to something new, something unexpected, something perhaps that they wouldn't have thought of themselves. And when they have that extra time and they have the quality time with a good tasting room person, that's the kind of experience they'll get. So typically, if it's the right time of the year, that's not too hard to do. If it tends to be later in the year, during the busy summer months, we often suggest that people come either earlier in the day or later in the day to try and find that lull in traffic. But if it's somebody who's in the business that is maybe a little bit more knowledgeable and they're looking for a little bit more of that intimate time, an awful lot of our tasting rooms are starting to offer kind of a higher quality experience for people who want that. Where they can find maybe a quiet corner or a quiet table and have a little bit more of an intimate conversation with again, a knowledgeable wine representative from that winery. So it can be varied, just depending on who the person is and what they're looking for. Well, there are a number of things that really sets Michigan wine apart. But when you're living in this state, when you're living in this region that's around the Great Lakes, we obviously have a climate that's very unique to this part of the country. We're the furthest north maritime climate, and so we have an awful lot of moderation that goes on because of the Great Lakes. We also have soil types that were created by the retreat of the glaciers, and we have an awful lot of mixed soils, especially up here in northwest Michigan. And so what we like to talk about is kind of the flavors of the region, the flavors of a place. And the wines themselves, are certainly a part of that, but the food that is also coming out of this region, out of this place, is a part of that. So the idea is that when you eat some fresh greens from here, or when you're tasting produce that's grown from here, next to wines that are coming from here, there's a synergy that's going on your palate. And you can only get that with the wines that come from that place. All the great wine regions of the world, when you go to their region, you drink the wines from that region, you eat the foods of that region. And that's more and more what's really taking shape here in northwest Michigan. But generally we have this long growing season that starts very cool at the beginning, so it's very slow in the beginning, and it ends very cool. And typically what we have in the middle is a good warm period where we get plenty of ripeness and plenty of vine growth for adequate development with the fruit and with the grapevine. But that ending portion where it gets rather cool, ripening slows down, we don't get sugars in the berries that climb through the roof like they do out west in warmer regions, but we get flavor development, and that flavor development tends to be really bright and really fresh and really vibrant. And our job as winemakers is just to make sure that we hold on to that, and that we're not losing what is so delicate in some ways, but so unique to our own region. So it's multifaceted, and unfortunately in a region like this it can often be subtle, and sometimes people are looking for something that's a little bit more in your face, but our wines are definitely not that. They tend to be a bit more on the subtle side of things.
So if you here at Black Star Farms, if you had to recommend a wine for someone who's never had any of your wine before, what would you tell them to get?
Well, it's a challenge to always answer that question, because we make so much of wine that I love, and it depends really on what I'm having as an experience myself, whether I'm going to sit down at the table and eat something specific, whether I'm just going to be sipping something with friends. But You know, anyone here will tell you that I'm a huge fan of Pinot Noir, and Pinot Noir is really the variety from a red standpoint that I'm striving to try and highlight and fine tune. So I guess on the red side of things, I'd probably say Pinot Noir, and on the white side of things, I'd say one of our dry or off-dry aromatic whites in the way of our dry Riesling or our Pinot Blanc, or maybe our Gruner Veltliner, that are just, they're so versatile. Those wines are so versatile and can give you so much at the table or just in a glass as pure enjoyment that they're hard to beat. I mean, you hear this from just about anybody who's in the industry anywhere around the world, but it's such a pleasure when you enjoy so much of what you make yourself or what's being made in this region that it's hard to drink wines from outside the region at times because there's so much good wine being made here.